There's something living in my walls. I can hear it shifting around inside, moving closer every day. Sometimes it scratches and scrapes against the wood, but those are the quiet nights. The scariest noise is its breathing. I hear it inhale and exhale through the vents. It sounds like an animal, but it's not like any animal I've ever heard before. And when I know it's there, when I can feel its presence in the room with me, that's when it calls out my name. I'm going to tell you a story today about what it is like to live with something in your walls. A story of terror that comes from our community member, Bricks and Mortar. I'm the host, and this is the No Sleep Podcast. Let's begin with our first story. A cold wind rattled the loose shutters on my bedroom window. Rain lashed against the glass, a prelude to the raging storm outside. A tree swayed dangerously close to my house, its bare branches clawing at the roof. Thunder cracked overhead, and I pulled my blanket tighter around myself. That's when I started hearing them again, the faint scratching sounds. They were almost like fingernails on wood, only they couldn't be. I lived alone, at least I thought I did. My grandfather had built the house over 60 years ago. It was solid oak, painstakingly crafted by his own hands. But as time went on, it became too much for him to keep up. He had passed away several years back, leaving the house to me. Since then, I'd been slowly restoring it, fixing one room at a time. I had just finished renovating the kitchen when the scratching began. At first, it only happened at night. I could lie in bed, listening to the sounds drift in through the vents. Each scratch sent a shiver down my spine. I told myself it was just mice, but I didn't see any droppings. Plus, mice don't usually make themselves known. They just live in the walls and hide. These sounds were deliberate, purposeful. They seemed to come from all around me. Scratches in the living room, followed by loud footsteps above my head. Then silence. Was I losing my mind? Is there someone else in the house with me? Then came the whispers. I would hear my name being called from somewhere inside the walls. Sometimes it sounded like laughter. Other times it sounded like cries. It always sounded close, like right behind me. But when I turned around, no one was there. I never saw anyone, or anything. But the noises continued. I could hear what sounded like footsteps in the attic directly above my bedroom. They'd move about from left to right, slow at first, then quick and frantic, followed by heavy thuds. I tried to look in the attic, but the stairs were old and creaky. Each step protested under my weight, making more noise than whatever was up there. Still, I wanted to see what was causing these sounds. So I kept trying different combinations of steps until finally the floor gave way. A cloud of dust rose up as the floorboards collapsed beneath me. I fell through to the attic. The space was pitch black, so I fumbled for my flashlight and shone it around. All I could see was debris and old furniture. But where the beam of light touched, I saw something strange. Drawings on the floor, pictures of stick figures and geometric shapes. Were these made by a child? Had someone been living up here? Why would they have drawn pictures on the floor and then buried their work under piles of trash? I searched the whole attic, finding nothing else out of place. I didn't see any sign of a person, alive or dead, but I did find a hole in the wall. It was a small square hole, just big enough for a person to crawl through. It was concealed by a loose shutter, which I pushed aside to peer inside. What I saw took my breath away. There were drawings pinned to the wall, crude pictures of monsters and creatures. Some appeared to be scratched with a fingernail. Others looked like they'd been cut into the wood with a knife. But how could this be? Whoever was doing this obviously knew their way around these walls. How long had they been here, and why? In the center of the drawings was a smaller hole, one that looked man-made. It wasn't like a ventilation shaft. It was too small for that. Curiosity got the better of me, and I reached inside to try to grab it. Something hard caught my fingers and I pulled it out. It was a small wooden box. I pried it open and found a collection of old toys, a battered teddy bear, a chipped porcelain doll, and a worn leather journal. I flipped it open and began to read. This must have belonged to the previous owner. The pages were filled with cryptic messages written in pencil. Most of it was nonsense. Numbers and letters scrawled all over the page. But some entries stood out. "They're coming," one said. Another read, "I can hear them scratching at the door." A third entry said simply, "Help me." Was this person driven insane by whatever was in the walls? Or were they trying to warn me? As I read, the wind outside picked up, rattling the windows and shaking the house. Rain poured down in sheets. I closed the book, tucked it under my arm, and made my way to the hole in the wall. I was sure whatever was in there was trying to get out. It was trying to tell me something. The flashlight in one hand, I braced myself and crawled through. The air was stale and earthy, like an old tomb. Space was narrow, just big enough for a person to squeeze through. It was dark and silent. Couldn't see anything. I struggled forward on hands and knees, feeling my way in the darkness. Where was this going? How deep did this tunnel go? I didn't want to turn around and go back, but I also didn't want to keep going deeper into the darkness. Then I saw a light ahead. I crawled faster. The sound of dripping water grew louder. Finally, I came out the other side. The air rushed back into my lungs. I lay on the floor, gasping for a moment until I realized something. I wasn't in the house anymore. I was outside, looked around. I was in a small clearing surrounded by trees. In front of me was a large oak, the same oak whose branches scraped against my window back in the house. How could this be? How could I have been inside my house and outside at the same time? Confused and scared, I ran back to the house. I burst through the door and stumbled up the stairs. I felt something shift inside the walls. Whatever was in there had moved. As I climbed the stairs, the sound of scratching grew louder. And then the wall gave way. Drywall buckled and split open, revealing a bulge beneath. At first it was small, but then it grew rapidly. I watched in horror as it widened, revealing a dark shape moving inside. A hand, pale and skeletal, emerged from the hole, followed by a face, gaunt and horrifying. It reached for me, its fingers scraping across my arm. I screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The creature let out a screech and vanished back into the wall. The hole began to close. I backed away, tripping over my own feet. The wall was healing itself, sealing itself shut. I ran for my life, bursting out of the house and into the storm. I haven't looked back since. I sold the house for a loss and moved away. Sometimes at night, when the wind blows through the trees, I can hear it again, scratching at the walls. Whatever it is, it followed me. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the channel, please consider supporting us. Your support allows us to continue bringing you terrifying tales from our community members. Also, don't forget to follow our social media if you want to see more content like this. Till next time, sleep well.